Well, hey everybody. I am sitting out on my brother's patio in just outside New Orleans, Louisiana. I've been down here doing a few site visits and attending the hooding and the graduation ceremony sponsored by the Herzing New Orleans campus. We had, I think, close to 30 some odd of our students who participated, including one student who traveled all the way from California, so that was exciting. I just want to make sure that I touch base with you all. Week one was very short and very quick. I actually recorded a video for week two, but with my travels, I never had time to get it out to anyone. So I'm going to encompass my thoughts from that into this one. Want to make sure that all of the faculty are familiar with the changes in the Typhon documentation policy. As I said last semester, when I put a video announcement into course sections to the students, it's probably a good idea that the faculty review what I'm saying to the students so that the faculty know when the students start questioning things or challenging things, where it's coming from. And the new policy was attached to that announcement. I will attach it to this communication as well. We are holding students accountable to weekly submission of their assignments, which means we are going to be held accountable to weekly evaluation. If by any chance your student has reached out to you in congruence with the Herzing makeup policy provisions for extenuating circumstances and you have agreed to accept an assignment after due date and time, realize that's only 7 days after the initial due date and time, but you still have to put a 0 in the grade center for the week that it was due in. And then you can go back and change that from a 0 to the amount of points that they've earned after they have submitted that assignment. We are all holding students accountable to the same policy standards, okay? This week, all of your students have their discussion threads and their clinicals. Remember, 5 points for their weekly clinical reflection and update. And yes, they have to turn in a weekly clinical reflection and update. There are, even if they're not in clinical, and there are instructions on what they need to do for that in their week, I believe it's their week 2 module when they grab that weekly clinical reflection and update form. They have to list a goal for a future clinical experience, even if that's the next semester or their practice, and they have to reflect on something from their current clinical experience, even if they've finished with it or they weren't in clinical, they can reflect on something else from a prior week. The other 5 points is for Typhon, 2.5 for having all of their encounters done by the due date and time of that academic week, and the other 2.5 points for having the required number of SOAP notes. Please review how we are to evaluate SOAP notes. There is a rubric. I will attach that to this email as well. It is also housed on the online nursing department as a resource. Make sure that you are appropriately applying the SOAP note rubric and the appropriately applying the guidelines for the 2.5 points for being on time and the 2.5 points for having the appropriate number of SOAP notes. SOAP notes are not graded per se. The value for the student comes in the feedback that you provide. And even though there's no points associated with being approved or not approved, if their SOAP note is not approved, and if they do not meet proficiency on that SOAP note based on the rubric guidelines for proficiency, you're to mark it not approved and provide the students with feedback. I will attach screenshots in this email that show you how we're going to be providing feedback in the comment sections in Typhon. This week, well, let's talk a little bit about week 2. There was a problem with deployment of quizzes. I sent you communication last week that we are going to give students to the end of week 3 to finish the Unit 2 week 2 quiz. Not all courses had a quiz due, however. This week, your students in NU 609, in addition to discussion thread and clinical activities, have an APEA assignment. NU 623, your students don't have anything additional, but remember they have until the end of this week to get their week Unit 2 quiz number 1 done. NU 627, your students have their first DRP paper. Additionally, NU 631, so 627 and 631, your students have their first DRP paper. And also in NU 631, your students have their quiz number 1 that can be submitted or completed up until Sunday night. And in NU 632, your students don't have anything extra, but remember they have up until Sunday night to get their quiz number 1 completed. This semester, I'm not teaching any courses. I'm going to be focusing on faculty observations on how we are doing, executing our role as faculty. Are we utilizing our rubrics appropriately? Where do my faculty need support and coaching from me? How do we coach anybody who may be struggling with appropriate application of rubric criteria and through that? And please be sure that we're looking at all of our evaluations on a weekly basis. We're getting our points in the grade center on a weekly basis. The university is watching that carefully, and they're holding me accountable to watching that carefully. I will be doing observations. So if you want to know what those observations are going to encompass, on the faculty responsibilities page is the graduate clinical faculty performance observation process. And here's the clinical faculty observation SOP and the rubric that I'll be using. If you serve in a didactic role, Dr. Cozy Bagley, who is our course lead faculty person, she'll be doing your course observations. And here is the SOP and the rubric for that as well. So a lot going on this semester. I'm going to be doing a video for our students as soon as I get some documentation from our clinical coordinators to include in that particular video tutorial, not tutorial, but that video announcement I want to give the students about what their preceptors are supposed to be doing in Taiwan. We do have a new page on the online nurse department office. It's the clinical coordinators. It gives their names and their contact emails. Couple of important links here. I will tell you that all things clinical and Taiwan related, those things go to the clinical coordinators, not to me. If you send it to me, I'll just copy the clinical coordinator on that in my response to you. And I have some updating to do on the website, but as always, I appreciate everything that you do for our students. I could not do this job without you. I know it was just a short 1-week break between the semesters. I think if you're like me, you're feeling like we didn't get a break, and hopefully we will be able to enjoy our next break, which encompasses the Christmas and New Year's holidays. I appreciate everything. Thanks, you guys.